Okay, want to welcome everybody, all 7 of us.
Well, we got a lot more online.
to the November meeting, plus 1, 2, 3. I see Brian, see John,
4, 5, 6, 7.
see
And we got
Justin,
2 more
Mary,
that are supposed to be in, but
Tammy and Craig and Betsy. Anyway, welcome to the November meeting. Craig and Betsy cannot be here, but they're online with us, or it shows they are. And Craig, did you say you were not going to be here for the December meeting? Well, I thought.
Yeah, that's correct. We're going to miss December as well.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right.
Have you resigned early, Craig?
No, we're in Orlando for DEMA. We've never been, so we decided to come this year, and it just happened to coincide. However, next month, yeah, we're playing hooky in Indonesia for about 3 weeks or so.
Good deal.
Okay.
Good deal.
Okay.
Anyway,
the program.
Wow.
Well,
The program
tonight
is with Remy
Remy
on shooting under. Somebody needs to mute. And everybody mute their
I'm
phones
hearing
or-
double.
Yeah, right.
because we're getting
feedback.
from the, people online right now.
Has everybody muted their phones or their?
Now you're not.
There we go. Okay. Can everybody hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. The program tonight is by Nicholas Remy, shooting underwater photographs using a snoot technique, which I have never used before, but some people here have. And Dennis will talk about the program a little bit later. The other issue we have for the November meeting is taking nominations for officers and board members next year. And Craig enumerated that in the newsletter. There's been a few changes. Dennis is going to move to membership, and Justin, who is on, is going to move to vice presidency. And Craig would like a replacement. And I only see 6 people sitting out here right now. And nobody's holding their hand up, Craig. So it looks like you're going to still be president next year. Justin's going to be taking over the vice president position. And then with Joe Hall's passing, we're going to have a new trip coordinator, and that's going to be Trish Ross. I talked to Trish yesterday and the day before yesterday, and she's really looking forward to it. Club treasurer, that position is also going to be open because Debbie wishes to retire from that position, and we're looking into that right now. She said she would serve in a transition position until we find somebody for that position.
Hey, Brian, question. Regarding treasurer, I see that Kathy has joined HUPS. Do you think that she might do double duty for us?
It's possible. You can always ask her. I mean, she's really good with numbers. That's her game. Oh.
And she is a CPA, isn't she?
She's, Javon said no.
Oh, she's not? Okay. So,
All right, well, we'll have to find somebody else.
okay. Anyway, that's something to keep in mind. Also, let's see, Justin, you're going to be now vice president, correct?
I'm present. I'm ready for it.
Vice president. I'm
I'm
going to come to the nomination just a minute. And Tammy, are you still willing to serve as secretary?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have nominations on the floor, then starting with president? No.
Oh, I nominate Craig.
I'll second that nomination.
All right.
All 4 are opposed. All four.
Wait. I nominate Donald Trump. He seems to have the rest of the world sorted out. So,
Yeah. 80% nitrox.
Okay, by acclamation, Craig will be the president for 2026. Justin is up for vice president. Do I have a nomination from the floor? Okay. Did you get that, Tammy?
Am
I
I
don't
supposed to
have
be
Tammy.
writing this down?
Well, probably for the minutes.
Okay. Well, I have Dennis for membership, Justin for vice president, Craig with a question mark.
No,
Trish
Craig's
Ross.
president now.
And I've got Trish Ross for trip coordinator.
Right.
And Debbie as a transition for treasurer. We're trying to get somebody else.
Correct. Okay. Let's see, I think I saw the officers. President, vice president, treasurer,
Secretary.
and secretary. Oh, I do need a nomination for secretary for Tammy. Can I have a nomination for? Okay, and can I have a second for that? All right.
Who was nominated just now?
You're nominated for secretary.
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear the floor.
Okay, now you were nominated. The second nomination was seconded, and by acclamation, you're the secretary.
Oh, okay. Thanks a bunch.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Jim Menzie does wish to come off the board. And is there anybody sitting around here today that would like to be on the board? We actually accept whoever would like to be on the board without a nomination for it.
Me on it.
Yeah, I think all the board members except for Jim agreed to stay. Debbie, you're probably going to have to find your own replacement. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
We'll look around.
We're looking though for you. Okay. The rest of the board members are going to remain the same. Trish Ross, well, she's new. Trip coordinator Martin Daniels will remain in his position as photo contest coordinator. Betsy will remain, I think, as newsletter and video contest, newsletter and HUF coordinator. Is that correct, Betsy?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Workshop coordinator will
remain as David.
Somebody's got to mute all their stuff again.
Yeah, there we go.
David Linderman agreed, I think, to remain in his position, and Frank and Mark Leiserowitz will remain as TGCC representatives. Joe Holden is webmaster, Frank Burek is club historian, David Linderman is Moody Gardens coordinator, and Mary is still special events coordinator. Is that correct, Mary? Sandy Bryan, without her knowledge, is the merchandising coordinator. The other board members are Mike Gruder, Monica, Brian, and me. Anybody else wishes to serve on the board, please let us know because we'll be more than happy to welcome you on the board.
I check on Monica to see whether or not
Yeah.
she's interested.
Right.
She hasn't been really active.
There's still a lot of need for programs in 2026, but I'll let Justin and Dennis talk about that a little bit later. If you read the newsletter, you realize there's a composition workshop November 15th from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock here at Bayland. And I'm sure Mr. Potato Head will make an appearance during that presentation. David Linder will be conducting that workshop in composition on those dates.
Hey, Russell, I don't know. Can y'all hear me?
I can. There you are, David.
Can you hear me?
You were, yeah, you were
Hey,
still
this is
nominated.
David. We're we're
Go ahead.
driving back from Colorado. I hope to be to the hotel by now, but I'm not. So we're in the car. So I just want to say, yeah, I have a lot of good information to share in the workshop this Saturday. So I'd love to see y'all there. You know, the information shared can be used for video or stills and any kind of camera. So it's not, you know, specific to, you know, more advanced photographers or beginner photographers. It can benefit everybody. So again, this Saturday at Bayland, hope to see y'all.
Okay, well, the big question is the world famous Mr. Potato Head going to be there?
I think Mr. Potato Head will be in a little bit, but there's a new character also that will be included as well. So
That's going to
We'll
be a
see.
surprise, though. Okay.
If you can
I appreciate it,
find
David.
an earlier newsletter, the link may work better.
I'll let Martin talk about
earlier
the
newsletters.
photo contest a little bit later. But the photo contest categories are listed for next year in the newsletter, if everybody would take a look at it. And I started to say, is there any new members or guests here today? But I think everybody's been here
Well,
before.
go to hups.org
Uh,
and search
see
for
what else we
that
got.
and then get one that's earlier than
Martin,
today
you wanna
and
talk
it
about
should
photo
probably
video
pop up on
contest?
you. I know you've done it before, haven't you?
This time is our last official themed
Okay, well, let's
contest,
hope.
and this will, the winners with the most points for the photographer of the year will be this month, and that will determine the end of that. And then next month will be the creative contest. The creative contest and voting for best of HUPS for all three categories in the December meeting. And that will be done live in the meeting.
Thanks.
Hey, David, do we have any workshops scheduled for next year?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. I don't see Mark or Frank here today for the TGC news. Mary, you want to talk about the December 8th Christmas party, or do you want Martin to talk about it?
It'll be December 8th. I thought it was going to be December 1st, and I'm not going to be there. So he will bring everything, the sodas, and everybody and we'll have the raffle things. And so we'll have sodas, water, ice, and we'll send everything to set it up. And Trish is going to also help him with it.
Okay.
And
right.
what's the date? December 8th?
December the 8th. It was on our calendar for December the 8th.
That's a Monday.
Okay.
And I just thought it was going to be the
Should be.
first Monday of
That's
December.
what it should be.
Wasn't even thinking.
Okay. Betsy, you want to talk about HUF 2026? You still there?
Gotta take it off mute.
Hey, Betsy, get off mute.
Get off mute.
Here we are.
Hey, yeah, just briefly, just to remind everybody that our entry deadline is December 31st. So all of our judges, please go ahead and start judging the entries so that we don't get behind. And I'll talk to you all about it a little bit more in private emails, but December 31st is our entry deadline.
Okie doke.
Okie doke.
Let me see, Brian,
Brian.
would you talk about the Chuck oil spill? And everybody else mute their, thank you. Brian, turn your mute back off. Brian, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just saw an article on that where and we put it in the Lunar Fins newsletter about one of the oil tanks is finally well, we all knew it was inevitable, but yeah, it's finally ruptured or rotted out, and it's leaking a pretty large oil spill in Chuck Lagoon. So I can forward the article to put it in the newsletter to Betsy if y'all would like. It's we all knew it was going to happen, so hopefully they were more prepared to start containing it. And there's a lot more to go from there.
So Brian, I did put it in the November newsletter. I copied your article and it's in the HUPS November newsletter already.
You have not reading the entire newsletter. I'm so sorry.
Okay, trips for 2026. I was going to have Trish talk about it, the Bonaire trip. I think there were only 4 people. Did you go on that, Martin? You want to talk about it real quick?
Yeah, we went to Bonaire. It was only 4 it was me and Kirk and John Van Atta and his wife. That was it. So we hadn't been seeing a lot of stuff that we normally see on the Bonaire trips, like frogfish and seahorses and octopus and stuff. But this time we saw all of that. So I don't know if it's coming back or we were just more observant or whatever, but I got to see all of those things: seahorses, several octopus, frogfish, everything.
Right.
So hopefully that's good news.
Yeah. How was the harp oral?
I don't know. It was okay. You know, I mean, I didn't really notice. It was lots of stuff there. So, yeah, we had a good time.
Okay. Anybody else been on a trip? Dennis?
Let me see if I can't get myself on here. Okay, yeah, I went on the Cayman Aggressor coming up in November. It was October, second week in October. I went with the Campanellis. That would be, excuse me, I need to turn Javon down. Here we go. I went with Candace and Joe and Bert and Candace's boyfriend, Rob, and of course, my friend here, Roberto, who we got certified together. And we had a good time. What do you think?
Yes, a fantastic service with those folks. The crew was just great. The food, there were about 5 days, 5 dives per day. Not every day, but some nice dives. Folks saw everything from hammerhead to just all kinds of things. I really enjoyed the trip.
Yeah, I have, we had a cancellation in Lunar Fins, which I'm a member of. Marty Schneiderman wasn't able to make it because he's going to be in the air because Philippine Airlines changed their schedule. So I've decided, I volunteered to put together a presentation for the trip that we did to Grand Cayman or to the Cayman Islands on the Cayman Aggressor. And it is a work in progress right now, as it usually is. I just about have all of my assets fully edited, and I just started putting it together today. But it should be interesting. I hope that it turns out as good as that is in my mind right now. It's going to be called Cayman Islands Yesterday and Today, because I'm going back almost 30 years or more than 30 years into the Cayman Islands. Bert and Joe have been there many, many times. They've been on the Aggressor boats 33 times. Well, he has been, she's been on 30 times. So they have quite a bit of history with the Aggressor. So keep your fingers crossed. I hope it all turns out like I have it in my mind right now. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, one other trip we have is the one that I'm supposed to be leading to the BVIs from May 23rd through May 30th. 8 people have signed up for it and have paid their deposits or in the process of paying their deposits. Brian, did you ever talk to one of the other dive clubs about possibly going? You're going to have to unmute.
Okay. I mentioned it that for Lunar Fins, I did not talk to Chum about it.
Okay. I was just wondering if anybody else was interested. I have a handout, but here, but it was also in the newsletter. So if anybody's interested in going, please get back to me. I know that all of us have, like I said, paid the deposits. The 8 of us that have originally told me they wanted to go. So I actually need a couple more to get at least I think I do, to be able to get the quote that we got from Dive BVI. And we've got until December to pay the deposits, and then I think February to pay the rest of it. Anyway, if you're interested, get hold of me. I'd appreciate it.
All right, Joe, but Russell, but I forgot to ask Javon to put it in the newsletter. So
it's in in your newsletter.
In our newsletter.
Okay. You might tell them to go to the HUPS newsletter because Betsy put it in the flyer in there. So the latest one. So, okay. Thank you. Program. Dennis, you want to introduce our speaker?
I hope so. So if I can get myself in line here. Want to introduce our speaker from Australia. He's actually French, and I guess he's moved down there for the weather, right? Or maybe they're diving. Nicholas is he is the founder of a club called the Underwater Club, which deals with online and I guess on trips, photography classes. And we're going to get one of those tonight on snoots. He is an ambassador for Maris and Nauticam, and he chairs the jury of the prestigious DPG Masters Photo Competition. He's been shown worldwide, his images, and he's got over 40 international photo awards. I want to introduce him tonight, and Nicholas, good luck. You got a full hour.
Thank you, Dennis. Hi, everyone. It's great being with you tonight. So we've been chatting with Dennis for a little while about getting to know each other and myself coming for a talk. We've landed, I'll try sharing my screen because it won't work so well without the screen sharing, even though I can talk as if there were no tomorrow for hours. With images, it would be a bit better. Can you see my screen?
There you go.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, we landed on the topic of snoot photography because it is a skill that can be a little bit difficult to acquire, but is really well worth the effort because then it opens the door to a lot of creative underwater photography or videography techniques as well. As Dennis alluded to, I teach underwater photography for a living. That's my specialty. But I know there's quite a few very keen videographers amongst the Houston Underwater Photographic Society. And most of what I'm going to cover tonight, you can transpose to videography, everything that's about, you know, how to position a snoot, framing considerations, and that sort of things will be very applicable to video as well. So without further ado, that's what I'm planning to cover tonight. Just checking on time to make sure I don't drive for too long, and that's all good. That's what I've planned for tonight. So I'll first get quickly into what is a snoot, why we might want to be using one underwater, then how to actually aim a snoot, which probably is the most complex aspect in a technique, but you'll get the gist of it, and then it will make everything easier. Then I will discuss, and with aiming the snoot, I will cover some do's and don'ts, some booby traps that you want to stay clear of. Then I will talk about some more advanced scenarios where a snoot is involved. And then I'll introduce the Underwater Club, give you a quick tour of what things are like. And then I'm excited to go and talk about a few of the photos and videos that some of you sent me. So thank you for doing that. I can talk about my own photos for hours, but I much like as well, you know, looking at your photos and giving you my thoughts there in a constructive way. And then we will conclude with, oh yeah, I wanted to share quickly the next photography workshop that I'm doing in the Philippines. Without further ado, let's move on. What the heck is a snoot and why would you want to be using one? So a snoot is very simply a tube in some way or form that is going to restrict the angle of the light source that you're using, whether that's a strobe or a video light. It's just going to cut it down and make it much more narrow. You can find all sorts of snoot, from the very cheap DIY solution, which I'm holding on, that's gonna be hard, on my right hand, on the left of the screen. That's just PVC plumbing hardware I purchased in my local hardware store. It just so happens to be the right size to clip onto my iron strobes, just the right size. It is in US dollars, maybe less than $5. And it does the job. It cuts down the amount of light produced by the strobe and makes it more narrow. You can see that I did wrap some duct tape around it because although it's opaque, some of the strobe light was sort of bleeding from the side. So this is just to focus the light in a narrow beam. Now, this can be, you know, DIY. Some people have used old wetsuit sleeves that they attach to their strobes, soft drink bottles, anything that tickles your fancy, as long as you're narrowing down the light beam. But there are some much more fancy solutions, such as the one I'm holding on the right of the screen, which is an optical snoot. It's a bit more costly. It's a commercial snoot that you can purchase. An optical snoot includes a number of lenses within the tube, and the purpose of those lenses is to refocus the light, the wide beam that came out of your video light or strobe, and try to minimize the loss of light, essentially, because when you put a tube in front of your strobe, you're losing tons of light. For many scenarios, if you're doing macro, if you're very close to the subject, it won't be too much of a problem. But generally speaking, you want to make as much of the light source that you're using at the beginning. And that's what an optical snoot does. Those lenses try and refocus the light and give you more bang for your bucks, essentially. Now, the snoot effect, just to be visual, I like to use diagrams in my teaching. That's your traditional strobe or good video light on the left, very wide beam, 100 degrees, 120, 130 degrees maybe, which is fantastic for wide angle, but terrible for macro. And the snoot is going to change things around by making the beam much tighter. And one benefit of doing that is dealing with distractive backgrounds. So this seahorse is this little guy I photographed in one of my local muck dives in Sydney. The animal is lovely, very photogenic, but look where it lives. That's its natural environment, very distracting background with some pinkish shells, sponges, and it's all mucky and dirty. The algae are not pretty at all. So it's, no matter how lovely the animal, with all those distractions, it cannot make a great photos. But that's where you can use a snoot to very specifically illuminate only the subject. And I'll put the two photos side by side, but I think that you'll agree the one on the right with the snoot is much better. Now, it can also be used to, just help the subject stand out and create separation from the background. Here, there's a juvenile serpent eel peeking out of the sand at night. There's no really distractions there. It's just hard to see because guess what? It's camouflaged very efficiently against that sandy bottom. But the problem is we can't really see that animal. It doesn't pop out of the screen. So that's another scenario where you want to use a snoot to create a bit of a spotlight effect on that subject. And the background was not really distracting, but the background was preventing us from seeing the subject, which is now resolved by the use of a snoot. Again, I'll put it side by side. I think you'll agree as well that the photo on the right is much nicer than the other one. In addition to that, you can use a snoot. You'll notice, but what I'm going to say right now applies to any scenario where you're using just a single strobe or single video light and you place it above the housing. What you're doing then is you're projecting the shadow of the subject below that subject. And as you can see with my flounder here, it helps create that subtle separation from the bottom. This guy, again, very well camouflaged, but now we've got that dark shadow just below the mouth, and that helps create that three-dimensional effect. The challenge with video lights, strobes underwater is we all start using them because we want to revive the warm colors that we lose at depth, right? That's why we start using those lights. And topside photographers and videographers don't usually use lights for nature photography. We do because we need those colors back. But what we don't always realize is with one and especially two lights, you're clearing all shadows. Yes, you bring colors everywhere, but you clear all shadows. And the problem in doing that is that you miss out on the benefits of the shadow: separation, texture, three-dimensional effects. For me, using a strobe, using a video light is as much about revealing those colors as it is about being intentional with where you're projecting shadows, and you can choose where to project shadows. So here with my snoot on the top, I'm projecting shadow below the subject, helps it stand out. Another use case for a snoot is simply to make it very easy to create a black background. There's this photo here with that black background could have been illuminated in other ways. If you think about two strobe scenarios, I could use inward lighting when I'm pointing the strobe sort of back at the camera and I'm using the edge of the light and I'm trying to put it in a way that it cuts right below the subject. That's just a little bit hard. And when you're shooting macro, you don't have to make your life that hard. One snoot with a light beam that covers the subject and its immediate surrounding is going to do the job very well. Now, you don't always have to have a black background, and I would urge you actually to try and diversify your macro photography, not to always do black backgrounds. I'm sure most of you have a diverse portfolio, but when you get into snooting and you get good at it, it's very tempting to snoot all the time, and you always get black background, and then you lack a bit of diversity in, you know, say your next trip, you're going to the Philippines, doing macro, you're snooting all the time. Are you really going to come back with all black background photos? Perhaps consider introducing some diversity. And one way to do it is to still let the ambient light bleed in the photo and be the first source of light. But that ambient light is going to be blue, green, or a mix of both. And then what you can do is use a snoot to reveal the colors, the warm colors, and brighten up the subject, but just the subject. And you're basically putting a spotlight effect on them without getting rid of all the ambient light. Now, let me explain another huge advantage of using a snoot, which is to reduce backscatter. And again, I'm going to do that using some diagrams. So picture this. You've recognized the camera, the lovely nudie branch, my yellow macro subject there. The orange line on that diagram, they represent the field of view of my macro lens. So anything that's outside the orange lines is not going to show up in the photo. So as you can see, I've framed my photo so that I can nearly fill the frame with that nudie branch. And all these blue spots that you can see on the screen, they are the floating particles that exist in the water. So it could be sand, could be some small animals. And these are the things that are going to show up as backscatter if you shine a strobe light on them. The strobe light, more so than a video light, the strobe light is going to freeze all those spots and create those bright white spots everywhere in the frame, and, you know, potentially make the photo a mess. In this diagram, I've put my strobes on the side, and I've aimed it so that there's only the edge of the strobe, the very edge of the strobe, that is going to hit the subject. And what that does is minimize the amount of other bright spot. I don't know if you can see my mouse there, the other spots that are going to show up as backscatter. So this is how you minimize backscatter using a single strobe that doesn't have a snoot. So it comes with its very wide light beam. The benefit of a snoot is that you have a much tighter beam, so that now you can point the light straight at the subject, and at the same time, you're not going to light up so many of those backscatter spots there. So your backgrounds are going to stay very clean. I'll just give you one example to illustrate what I mean there. See, this hairy frogfish was photographed by my wife in one of our local dive sites here. Terrible visibility that day. I'm going to say maybe 3 meters. That's what, less than 10 feet of visibility. And the snoot she used is not even a very tight snoot. That's my DIY plastic snoot. She attached that onto a very wide iron strobe, and she went single strobe above the camera. And that's the photo she got. Again, 3 meters visibility. There are a few backscatter spots. You cannot see them. Maybe there are maybe 5 or 6 of them. I did leave them for illustration just to show you how well you can lit a subject with very little backscatter in murky conditions because you've used a snoot. So that is really one advantage of these accessories as well. Now, let me have a sip of water and talk to you about how to aim a snoot. Now that we know why we want to use a snoot, let's see how to actually use it. So the biggest challenge with a snoot is aiming that narrow beam precisely on the subject. So it actually reaches. And there's a few ways you can go about it. If you're during a trip, you've got a private dive guide that is experienced with photography, that person might actually hold the strobe and the snoot and follow the subject for you and aim it, and then you just have to frame and shoot. Perhaps that's your dive buddy. Perhaps you have a dive buddy that's a very patient friend who's willing to do that for you as well. It's going to be all good and well, provided the subject is still. Because if you picture that you're trying to follow a blue ring octopus that's swimming on the bottom, and you're swimming, the blue ring is swimming, and your dive buddy is sort of swimming like a free spirit following you with a snoot, chances are they're going to bump into you, kick the bottom, you're going to kick the bottom, it's going to be really hard. So this works really well for subjects that don't move too much. Another thing you can do is to have the snoot on a tripod or on a mech stick for those of you who use the backscatter mini flashes or a very small flash. I have it, locked in place, pointed at the subject, and then you just have to move around and frame. Again, that works well with a subject that doesn't move and a subject that is not bothered by the aiming light of the snoot and doesn't start moving. So better than all that, I'm going to teach you how to be self-reliant, how to be able to aim a snoot yourself. The way I go about it is exactly what you see in the frame. That's my go-to starting point for snooting. So I have the snoot, the strobe and the snoot sitting above the housing, lined up with the optical axis of my lens, not sideways, precisely lined up as much as can be, and pointing downwards at a 45 degrees angle. I'm going to explain why that is in a minute with some examples. But the reason, if you look at the photo on the right of the frame where I'm facing, the reason why I want the snoot to be, lined up with the optical axis is when you're going to be trying to find the snoot beam as you compose your shot, if it's lined up, you always will be able to find it by tilting the camera up and down. There will be an angle where you find it, guaranteed. Whereas if that thing is slightly coming from the side, it would be much more fiddly for you to line up the subject, the optical axis of the lens, and the snoot light. So just center it. It's going to make your life easier. Once you've done that, and I would suggest that you do that before even having found your first subject, at the beginning of the dive, or perhaps once you start shooting, go on the sand, position the snoot exactly like I did, lock the strobe arms, and then go and take some test shots. And you will see at the beginning, you probably will have the snoot light, which will be slightly off. That's all right. So just wiggle the snoot a little bit until you have it centered. Obviously, you want to turn on the aiming light of your strobe so that you can actually see what you're doing before you're taking some test shots. Okay. On that note, it's going to be much easier, and this technique is going to work only if you have a strobe that has a centered aiming light, which is most strobes. But for example, my old trusty Inon strobes, they had a light that was off-centered. And in that case, you can't really use that technique. Or you can, but it's much harder. So basically, centered aiming light, so you can't use it to point exactly where the snoot is going to point. So then you look at the effect you have, you see whether you want a light beam that actually covers the whole frame, which you might do. Perhaps what you want to do is just to cut down backscatter and that's it. That's fine as well. Or whether you're going to have a smaller subject and perhaps you want more of that spotlight effect with everything black in the frame, except for a small area. So you choose what you want to do, but you make sure that the snoot is positioned in a way that achieves that effect, and then you'll properly lock the strobe arms, and then you go shooting. In case you're not getting you want to get a tighter beam, there's a couple of options you can follow. One of them is to just get the snoot closer, and then naturally the light beam that's hitting the bottom is going to be tighter. The thing is, you cannot get the snoot too close because at some point, especially optical snoots, at some point, the light is going to start to be, out-focused. The best way to describe it is for you to, during a dive, turn on your aiming light with the snoot on and just put it closer and further from the bottom, from the sand, and observe how the light disk that you're creating with your snoot is changing. And you will find that there is a sweet spot, which is, for most snoots, it would be the front of the snoot being maybe 5 inches from the subject or from the area you're lighting, as far as 15 inches, something like that. That's the sort of range I have in mind. It will depend on the snoot you're using. And in that range, you can have a properly defined beam of light with a sharp edge, a sharpish edge. If you get too close, at some point you will have the center of the snoot, which will be darker. And if you go too far away, at some point it would be not very defined as well. So just realize that getting too close with the snoot might be a problem. If that's the case, that's when you want to use a mask. A mask is what I'm holding in those frames here, something you can slide into the snoot to make the light tighter. In some snoots, you don't have to have an external accessory. You just turn a wheel on the snoot, and there's something internally that will close down like an aperture. So these are your two options. I personally prefer to get my snoot as close as possible, just because the snoot itself is going to cut a lot of light out of the strobes anyways. So if you put a mask in addition, it's going to do that even more. And depending on the aperture you're going to shoot, if you have cut too much light, then you have to have the strobe run on high power. It's going to take time to recycle and have sort of not over trouble like that. But that's your two options. Next, take some test shots. So we talked about making sure that the disk of light is actually on the right position within the frame, but you have to be critical as well when you review your test shots to make sure the exposure is okay. In this example, it's not okay. Yes, I have a disk of light, but as you can see, outside the light, outside the disk, I can still see the sandy bottom. What this tells me is that I still have some ambient light bleeding into the frame. So what do I have to do? Increase the shutter speed, max out the shutter speed to your maximum synchronization speed. If that's not enough, you're gonna close down the aperture to cut down even more ambient light. And of course, you want to run your ISO at a low level, 100 or 200. And if that's still not enough, well, that would be enough at some point, but if now the photo is just too dark, that's when you increase the power of your strobe or you bring it closer. Another good test to do is just to turn off the strobe for a second, take a shot and make sure it comes pitch black. That means you have adjusted your exposure parameters so that anything that doesn't receive strobe light is pitch black. Now, remember I said before that you need to aim your snoot at a 45 degrees angle. That's the reason. If at the beginning, people that get into snooting tend to have it very vertical. If you do that, the problem is there's a number of subjects where you'd have some weird shadows below the eyes. Frogfish is one example. Frogfish have some sort of small eyebrows that you can't really always see. But if you shine a vertical light onto them, that is going to project a vertical shadow and make their eyes dark. And you absolutely don't want that. When you take a portrait of a fish, you want the eye to be brighter than anything else rather than darker. So that's why I recommend that you go 45 degrees angle of the light. This way, you will still make the subject stand out, but you will make sure that the eyes are properly lit. I also recommend to not make your beam too tight, right? Don't make it tighter than it needs to be. When people get into snooting, they want to get that spotlight effect very visible. And I get it, it's different from any sort of lighting you might have done before. But if you make it too tight, and then at some point it becomes hard to make sense of what the subject is. So here, for example, it's all lovely, but you and I know that this is a frogfish. But for someone that's not an underwater photographer, they'd be like, what is it? You end up with a photo that is a half frogfish. I would recommend, if you go for that spotlight sort of effect, to include enough of the subject so that it just makes visual sense. And it's not to say that you can't snoot very, very tightly, like what I've done here. I've just snooted the face of that frogfish. But just ask yourself, when you review the photos afterward, take a step back before you leave the dive site, look at the photo and ask yourself, does the subject make sense? Don't just be fixated on, oh yeah, I've got a spotlight, I've got a subject that really stands out and very little backscatter, it's fantastic. Ask yourself, does the subject make sense? If not, go with a wider beam to make sure we understand what is being photographed. All right, I'm just checking on time. I'm not going too bad. I am now going to take a quick break and talk about advanced lighting techniques. Quick water break. Okay, so on this particular photo of me, you see me holding a second snoot. Once you're comfortable with one snoot, adding another one can really offer opportunities to pimp up your lighting, but also it comes with some challenges. And here, what I'm demonstrating is double front snooting, which probably is one of the hardest things to get right, and something I wouldn't recommend to my worst enemy. However, sometimes you have no choice, but you need it. This is one example. I'm photographing I photographed this handfish, spotted handfish in Tasmania. And if I was going with just one single snoot, 45 degrees centered exactly like I explained before, the risk with that critter that has a dorsal fin that's sitting in between those eyes is it very likely is going to project a shadow on either side. And then I'm going to have a weird shadow, and one of the eyes that is going to be darker than the other one, it's going to break the symmetry that I'm intending to create with that portrait. So it's not going to be a problem if I'm shooting from 3/4 from the side. When you're going for that facing portrait of a fish with two eyes clearly visible, you need to make sure they're lined up in the same way. And that's going to be harder if the subject has some features on the top that are going to create shadows. So that's one scenario where you may want to have a second snoot. The challenge, obviously, is that you cannot have both snoots at the center at the right time, nor should you. So what you're going to do is have the two snoots above the camera, but slightly spaced out and still pointing out at the middle to try and reach that subject. But then the problem is, as you're going to lift up and down, tilt the camera up and down a bit, you'll see the aiming light showing you where the snoot will hit going to move across. And it's going to be really fiddly to try and line them up, right on the subject. So it can be done, I would say only if necessary. Interestingly, doing something like backlighting with the snoot is much easier. I find it much easier than doing double front snooting. So I'm sure you've heard and seen and maybe practiced with backlighting before. Backlighting is really nice in that it helps create a glow from some subject, or at least create a bit of a highlight around their silhouette. So you're creating silhouettes underwater. It's fantastic with a hairy frogfish because now you have all those little hair appendages which become really visible and highlighted. So this would have been much harder to do with a normal strobe because even though I put it behind, it would have lit up all the pillars of the jetty where I was diving, all the shells, all the crap that was around that frogfish. So what did I do? I took one of my strobes with a snoot. I went around the pillar of the jetty. I put it on the ground. I think I used a tripod. I put it on the tripod, pointed back. It's coming from the right, pointing back 45 degrees in at the mouth and the head of that frogfish. I have turned on the aiming light to see exactly what the light was doing. Unfortunately, the frogfish didn't mind, so it didn't move. And then I ran a long fiber optic around that pillar, plugged it onto my camera, bang, took the photo. Once I was happy with those settings, and I'm like, okay, I've got my silhouette, I thought, well, I want some diversity in my portfolio again, so what else could I do? Well, I could still bring a front light so that we can understand better that subject. So now I've got a second snoot on my camera mounted exactly as explained before, 45 degrees above, to create some front light, but I still have my backlight behind, creating that glow around the subject. Now, this is a very contrasty photograph. It doesn't have to be that extreme. It can be much more subtle. So here I'm having one snoot above my camera, as always, 45 degrees, lighting up that particular hairy frogfish. And I have my dive guide holding another snoot for me and coming right from the left, putting a glow in the mouth of the frogfish and highlighting a little bit the beard, or the sort of beard that they appears to have with those hairs. So this is more subtle, but yeah, it creates some extra interest on the photo and makes it stand out. And nothing stops you then from going more creative with colors. So here I've got, again, one front snoot that is doing the same job as before. And I've got another snoot held by my dive guide behind me. And that's on that snoot, it's a backscatter mini flash with a color filter, pink color filter. He's basically holding that 45 degrees to light up the silhouette of that flamboyant cuttlefish. So that's another thing you can do. Again, snoots lets you be very specific with the lighting, and you can pimp up with some color as well. Now, like I said before, if you use your snoot during your next macro trip all the time, which you might as well do because it looks really good it can look really good on underwater macro photos, you will end up with a lot of black background images, and I would really recommend that you try and bring some diversity in there. One technique that I really like is something I call creative motion blurs. It goes with various names. I think topside photographers would call it intentional camera movement, ICM. So what it is essentially you're snooting the subject, just the subject. It has to be just the subject. Not something, by the way, this is only a photography, stills photography technique, because you have to use a strobe. So you're snooting just the subject with your strobe, aimed again, just like I said, 45 degrees above the camera. Snoot the subject, run the snoot on high power so that you can have a lot of light to freeze the subject, even though you're lowering the shutter speed very slow. So here I went to half a second. Sometimes I go to a full second. And what I'm doing there is I let a lot of ambient light come into the frame, and I'm panning the camera or turning the camera, wiggling the camera, so that anything that has not been lit by the snoot, which is the background, can turn into some shapes and patterns. And what sort of shapes and pattern I will get depend on the movement I'm doing with that. That alone is another advanced technique that I've taught a 1.5 hour masterclass on. We don't have time to go into all the details right now, but if that's of interest to you, you go on the Underwater Club's website. We've got a webinar, we've got an events page where you can replay all our past webinars and masterclasses, including that one. With that being said, it might be a good time, just checking on time, yes, we're good. It might be a good time to introduce the Underwater Club. But before I go there, does anyone has any questions for me?
Yeah, Nicholas, I had a couple of questions. This is Dennis. One is that on your camera, you show that you're mounting the strobe, your snoot on it, on the top of your lens. And does that have do you have any problems with it like that? Because when you're moving things around, you're putting a lot of torsion on that O-ring. I would worry a little bit about cocking that O-ring and accidentally getting a little pop of water in there. Any issue?
Not really, and there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the mini flash I'm using there, that's a mini flash 2 from Backscatter, and that snoot is only slightly excessively buoyant in the water. So, you know, with the buoyancy arms here, I didn't put some floats, but normally I would put some floats as well. It's nearly neutral in the water, so it doesn't really exert any force on the port. Now, there is some force if I'm going to move the strobe around, and I didn't take the time to, you know, loosen up the clamps, which you should be doing. Would that pop the port out of the way? Very unlikely, simply because that port is sucked in the housing with a vacuum system with 5 meters. That's 15 feet worth of force, anyways. So very
and
unlikely.
You're also probably running a vacuum on the system. So when you're getting in the water, there's no chance of an accidental bump, I would imagine. Yeah.
Correct. Not with that sort of force that I'm exerting. But I have to say, it's very rare that I just go with one strobe on one section arm position there. This was more a way for me to show you exactly where the strobe should end up. Usually what I do is I have 2 arm sections and 2 strobes. So they're more connected on the ball mounts, which are on the side of the housing. So can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay, they're attached, one there and one there, with 2 arm sections. And what that means is it gives me more flexibility to move the strobes around. But when I want to put the strobe exactly in the position I'm teaching right now, which is the easiest way for snooting, it's a bit of a pain because I have to put one arm on the side and then twist it back and do the same for the other one. So it's more fiddly, actually. So if I knew that for one particular dive, I'm going to do only snooting and with subjects which are not too far, that's much easier in terms of lighting setup.
My second question has to do with sort of a creative lighting situation where you do want to highlight the subject but you don't want it to be just totally black around it. In other words, there's something interesting around there, but you don't want it to be interfering. Have you ever done any work with a supplemental light, like a flashlight or a video light that gives you maybe -3 lighting around the subject that you're highlighting?
So you're suggesting just not to have a black background, but balance the light with a second light source, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've got any example handy, but yeah, this is one where there's no second light source. It's ambient light, but you could very well there say, okay, I'll have a video light as well, and I'm going to shine that video light around on all that scene and maybe put a filter there of, I don't know, pink, for example, if that tickles my fancy. And then what happens is everything will be pink on that photo except for that animal that would have been high spotted with the strobe. I can give you let me see if I find an example quickly. Can you see my Lightroom there?
Yeah, we're looking at your photos.
Okay, all right. So I'll just grab an example quickly if I can find it. So all my photos are arranged by location. So this is Australia, New South Wales, Sydney, and the photos I'm looking for is Clifton Gardens. It was in 20. I have to put a filter, otherwise you'll see all my crappy photos. Okay, I think it was December 24. Was it? Yeah. So December 24. Or was it December 23? Interesting. Must be December 24. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't have it there, but that sort of things, for example. So here I'm using one snoot to hit that particular C pen, and I'm using a video light that has a blue filter to create that color cast on all the rest.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've got some other shots of that, but I can't find them for some reason. Yeah, that's the sky's the limit then. But yeah, mixing two different lights can create some really cool effects.
Oh, thanks.
A quick one for you. Hi, Justin. How are you getting around the limitations with optical connections and 3 strobes? Are you doing what I normally do, just manually pull one sync cord from one strobe from my ion into the MF? That's what I see myself doing most of the time. And I was hoping that somebody would invent like almost like a multiplexer of the light that you could attach to the front port of the Nauticam housing and extend it to an even number, 4 ports. So then I can have 3 sync cords connected, one, two on each strobe and then one on each snoot.
Yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to do that, one thing that's possible today, if you're firing your strobes with electrical sync cords, is you can have, but you've asked optical, obviously, so let's not get into that. But with electrical sync cords, you have dual sync cords options, but that's more hassle than anything else.
Sure.
With optical firing, I haven't done it myself because whenever I've needed to fire more than 2 strobes, like thinking off-camera strobes, I would then go on using either a slave sensor, or I would then just use video lights, continuous lights. Yeah, because unless there's lots of ambient light, especially if you're doing macro, continuous light usually does the job very well.
Yep. Yeah, I've been snooting for a while now, and I'm planning to get another MF backscatter strobe and snoot, and then just ditch my ions, to be honest. Because the slave in the backscatter seems to be a little more superior now than the slave mechanism on the ions, because you have to take the coupler off the bottom of the ion to get that optical part to be revealed. Okay.
The backscatter strobes are really good for if you're thinking mini flash, they're
Yes.
one of the ones for macro and snooting in particular. I personally like a lot the retras as well, because the retras are good enough for wide, and then with the snoots, the macro works too. But
yeah, I started with the retro snoot. I still have it in a box there.
Yeah, good opinion. All right. Okay.
Hey, Remy, it's Craig here. Sorry, I'm not on video. This is a great talk, by the way. I'm really enjoying it. So it's a little bit of a provocative question. You know, if you just want to get the dramatic lighting, some people might say, well, oh, there's a thing called a vignette in post-processing. Why don't I just apply the vignette? And you mentioned a number of factors, but I have some ideas on that too, but I'm interested to what you say.
Yeah, there's a couple of
there's a couple of
reasons you might want to there's a bit of a loop. Yeah, thank you. So there's a couple of reasons. First of all, and that's something it's not of everyone's interest. It is to a number of my students, which is to here and there enter photographic competitions. The vignette is usually, you can have a bit of vignette, and sometimes you can put a little bit of vignette in addition to snoot lighting to make the effect more dramatic. But creating a snoot effect with a vignette for most photographic competitions wouldn't be allowed. So that's a consideration for someone that wants to submit those photos in competitions. The other thing is, with a vignette, you're only going to really replicate the snoot effect if you were shooting straight above. Whereas if you're shooting from, as I would recommend you do most of the time, you're being as low. Let's say you're shooting on the bottom, on the sandy bottom, you're being as low as you can on the ground, right? And then you're snooting, you're gonna have those dark corners in the two first corners and then further in the back. And that effect you can't recreate with vignette. You can recreate it by using some masking, radial gradients in Lightroom. It just becomes a bit more involved.
Yeah, that's the main, I mean, I got curious about that. That's the main thing I ran into, is that, yeah, you can do it, but it doesn't have the ray pass, the lighting ray pass that you get with a snoot. When you say you shot it with a wide angle light, all you got is still the wide angle illumination, but you've just dimmed out everything else. It's a very counterintuitive thing to me at first, but I just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, Craig, my point of view is that using the DaVinci vignette, I played with it like I know that you and Betsy have as well. And yeah, it works, but I've always thought when I'm looking at it, everything doesn't seem to be natural. It
that's what I said. It doesn't have the ray pass, Dennis. It doesn't have the ray pass from the snoot. Yeah.
Okay. And you won't have that bonus effect of the shadow separation below the subject and the texture that you get. I'll show you something else quickly.
Yeah, Nicholas, I have a question on this particular image right here. I like the fact that you don't have a spotlight where you have a hard delineation between the light and the dark. Are there any attachments that you can use that give you more of a bushy gradation between light and dark?
Sorry, I don't think I got it. So were you asking how to make that transition smoother, or?
Yeah. In other words, a little bit of, instead of a hard line between lighted area and dark, you have a gradation.
Yeah.
A blue, sort of bushy area.
Yeah, you get more of that. Remember what I said about how far the snoot should be to be, there's a range of snoot distance where you're going to get a very sharp edge of the light. And this is something you may want or may not want. And most of the time, sometimes you want that spotlight effect, fair enough. But, once you've done it a few times, you may want something a bit more natural. And the way you do that is you pull the snoot further away. And as you get further from that optimal distance, I'm talking optical snoots in particular, as you get further from that distance, then the edges of that beam become smoother, not as well defined, essentially. And this is a pretty big flounder, I'm going to say 1 feet long, maybe 1 foot long. So I really had to pull my snoot further back, much further than what what you can see on this photo, for example. And that makes the edge of the lights smoother as well.
Yeah. But there are no attachments like that you can put inside between the light source and the lenses that would give you a bushier appearance.
Not that I know of, no. But one thing you could do though is rather than, so the snoot is one option, right? Another one is to use, for example, on a few strobes, you can find reductors. So essentially tubes that are not as long as a snoot, they're just going to cut down the light, but not as much as a snoot. And because they're not optical, they're just tubes that you put there, they won't focus the light. So the edge of that light beam, it will be wider than the snoots, but it won't be as hard and as defined. And sometimes, you know, just a bit of a tighter beam is enough to create that background separation. I'll show you another example that I've shot recently. Okay, last weekend actually. Where's that? Okay, hide the crappy shots. All right. So this, for example, it looks like a snoot shot. It's not. So I've used one of my retro strobe, and I've put one of their reflectors, which essentially cuts down the light a lot, but doesn't have the ambition of creating that perfect sharp edge. It just doesn't. But it cuts down the light enough that by pointing it above the camera, point it down, I was able to create a bit of a wall of light in front of me, but not too far out.
Okay, creative lighting.
Yeah.
So, Remy, I have just one other comment on that, and it's maybe a detail, but there's a difference between blocking the light, which is what you do with a strobe and a conventional snoot, and having actual optics to produce very narrow beams. And on macro, I use some specific macro light, so I don't call it snooting, and it creates that nice soft roll off if you want it. I know we call all these spotlight type techniques sort of snooting, but in my mind, there's a difference between blocking it and having optics.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. Alrighty, we might keep going because I've got a few more things to cover, and then I really want to look at some of the photos that were sent, and we can do more Q&A afterwards as well, so no worries on that. Where were we? Okay. Yeah, okay. Just checking on time. Good. So I'll give you just a quick introduction of the Underwater Club. Dennis was kind enough to mention it before in the newsletter as well, and at the beginning of this meeting. But like I said before, I teach underwater photography for a living, and I would do occasional talks like tonight with you guys, sometimes on dive shows. And I do run a couple of trips where I teach every year. Next one I'm doing in the Philippines is June next year. But most of my teaching, most of the time, happens in the Underwater Club, which is an online underwater photography school and a community as well. So we have a wide range of self-paced online lessons. So if you've done any e-learning before, that's pretty much it. E-learning, something you can use on your computer, your TV, or even on your phone. It's meant to work really well on phones as well. And I've created over 40 self-paced online modules, which is split into small videos. So basically, they're rarely anything more than 5 or 10 minutes long. So whenever you've got a few minutes of free time, you can choose to spend that to further your passion for underwater photography and learn new stuff. And then you can just click, down on that module, and then you remember next time you pick it up, that's where you left things off. And that works really well for time poor people. I know one of our members is from Florida. She's juggling kids, 2 jobs, dive master in the weekend. And she told me she listens to those modules. She listens to me. She can apparently put up with my accent at 5 a.m. in the morning when she's at the gym doing other things as well. So it works for some people. We also run monthly webinars. So monthly webinars is usually a masterclass on one particular topic. So one of them I mentioned before was me teaching on creative motion blurs. But I also like to invite guest speakers to join me on stage. And we've had people like Tobias Friedrich giving a masterclass on Rex photography. We've had my friend Vanessa Mignon give one masterclass about how to photograph whales across the world. We had one on Blackwater, another one on webinars. We had Erin Quigley come and give us a crash course on how to use Lightroom for underwater. And there's many more than that. So it's all available as a replay for the members of the Underwater Club. We also have private forums where you can post a photo to get a constructive feedback on the image, what we like, what can be improved. And basically members can ask that, can use that to ask me any question on underwater photography anytime, or they can join me on 1 or 2 Q&A calls every month. We do 2 every month, but depending on time zones, there might only be one that's really suitable for the US. So we have a chance to catch up across the members, and people have built friendships with other photographers from all around the world, which I'm really happy with. If that's of interest to you, have a look. It's theunderwaterclub.com. That's how to find us. And you can start a free trial if you're curious to see what it's like. But without further ado, let us take a look at some of the photos and videos that you've sent me. And thank you, Dennis, for collecting all these on my behalf. We won't probably go through all of them, but I've picked up a few of my either favorites or those where I think there's a good conversation to have on. Constructive photo feedback is what I'm going to do now. It's a big thing in the Underwater Club, like I mentioned before, something that I believe can help someone tremendously improve their underwater photography. And I know it made a huge difference for me as I was learning underwater photography to have those constructive feedback from people that wanted to help. So what I do nearly every day is feedback on photos. I will also give my opinion on a few of the videos that you guys sent. So let's kickstart with a few photos sent by Barry. And I'll get a bit of water. I think this photo of a ribbon eel is a very good use for a snoot. Here, that's one of the prettiest eels you can find in the ocean, but they usually stand on the sand. They don't stand out from the background, and Barry used the snoot here to help create that background separation. So I like how the eel stands out from the back of the sand. I like the shadow that was created at the bottom. I think this is a really good scenario for a snoot. What I would say is, and I don't have a definitive opinion there, but if it was my shot, I would have probably increased the power of the strobe or just increase the shutter speed to turn the background black. That's my preference, but it's totally up to you, Barry, on what you like as an artist. There's no right or wrong. Here you're still suggesting the sand on the back. That works as well. What I would definitely do, though, is apply a radial gradient at the bottom of the frame, because we have a bit of a hot spot. The front is brighter, and that's going to be the case with every single snoot that you use. It's always a bit brighter in the middle, no matter what the snoot manufacturers tell you. And that's okay. It's not too hard to correct. You just go in Lightroom and apply a radial gradient and lower the exposure just on that area, and it will be more natural. But that's a lovely shot. This is another photo from Barry. It's a different take on how people normally photograph shrimp, whip coral shrimps and whip coral guppies, because usually you can have them, in front of an open water background that you can turn black if you want to or not. And people would typically go 1 or 2 strobes facing, projecting light and revealing all the colors of that whip coral and the subject. What Barry has done there is different, and I like different. What I like about it is he went with a snoot coming from, I'm going to say, the top right of the frame, projecting the shadows of the shrimp and the bulbs of the corals on the side. What that does for us here is create texture and a 3-dimensional effect. So that shrimp pops out much more than it would with a normal front lighting. What I would say, and that's totally up to the artist whether to follow my advice or not there, I would say I prefer having that coral not stand out on itself out of nowhereness. I think it would make more visual sense to crop the frame so that the coral basically starts and ends near the edges of the frame. Again, personal preference, so I leave it to the author to decide whether to do that or not. I want to discuss this photo because it features a very lovely effect you can have of a snoot, or let's say a very directional light, when you're shooting a translucent subject. That nudibranch is translucent. It looks like it's glowing from the inside. I absolutely love it. The one thing I would say is I think Barry went a little bit too vertical with the snoot. Remember what I said? I recommended before that the snoot should be at 45 degrees at an angle. The reason here is we've got the rhinophore on the left, which has been fully front lit or lit at an angle by the snoot. The rhinophore on the right is a bit too dark to my taste because the light comes a bit from above. You can always fix that in post-processing because it's not such a big difference. You could select that right rhinophore and brighten it up. But yeah, this is something you can avoid by just having that 45 degrees angle as opposed to being more vertical with your snoot. This is a great example where the light is not coming at such a sharp angle, I think, or simply the rhinophores are not as angled, so there's no shadows and they look perfectly symmetrical. I like symmetry. I would just say there, because the subject has been very well lit, I think it's the hero of that photo, and I would argue to crop it much tighter, just so that we get more of that lovely nudibranch. If you're doing that, yes, you're going to cut through some of that patch of reef that was lit with the snoot. And maybe the idea was, to showcase the spotlight effect. So that's totally up to you. I would not worry too much about that because I think that patch of reef is not particularly pretty. What's pretty is the nudibranch, so we'll just crop it much tighter. Okay, now moving on to a few photos from David. Starting with a very stunning portrait of a flamboyant cuttlefish. It's one of my favorite critters ever. It is lovely. It's very photogenic. And I think it's another valid use of a snoot whereby you just want to make it all about that subject. And, there's no background, there's no reef, there's no other context, but who cares? Because that animal is stunning. And your snoot has allowed you to remove any background and still create a bit of that 3D effect because we have the shadows just from below the eyes there, which make it pop out of nowhereness, but in a good way. So I like that shot. It's an interesting use of a snoot as well. Good background separation. I can very well imagine that there were other parts of the anemone behind, or perhaps some reef that would have been distracting. I like the use of a vertical frame there. Only thing I would say is the anemone bulb on the left of the frame, right, is a bit brighter than the other ones. It's not overexposed by any means, but it's a bit brighter and it drives my eye away from the composition. What you really want is to have the viewer keeping on looking at the photo over and over for longer, so you don't want anything that drives them away. So my suggestion would be in Lightroom or any software that's similar to those capabilities, use a radial gradient from the left and use that to just lower the exposure so that bulb becomes not brighter than the other ones. That's number one. Number two, I would say if you wanted to, you could crop a little bit from the bottom right, just because, again, that's my preference of not having a piece of reef pop out from nowhere. But this is subjective. If that's the look you like on your photo, you're the artist. It's your shot, your call. This portrait of I think it's a motohi cuttlefish, probably from Southeast Asia. It's quite stunning. Not only because we've got good background separation, but also because look at the very fine texture. Look at the spiky effect we have on the skin of that octopus. That is something that's created by the fact they're using a single light. And I think it's great. The colors are amazing. My only regret there is that we lose the tip of the tentacles. And for me, they're part of the story. They're part of the animals. So I would rather have them in. Perhaps you have boosted the contrast on that photo. It looks like it a little bit. If that's the case, maybe they were partly lit in the original RAW file, assuming you're shooting a RAW file. If that's the case, and you go back to the original, you might be able to bring them back because that area of the octopus is not as colorful. So what you could do is select the subject. If it's not fully black, add a linear gradient to brighten up the area that didn't receive much strobe light, because there's a good chance the edge of your snoot was not that sharp, that perfectly defined. For mine, it rarely is. And then once you've brightened that up, you also want to selectively change the white balance in that mask, because there's only cold blue colors there. So you would brighten it up and move from blue to yellow and from green to red. And perhaps you can bring back the tip of the tentacles then. This is a good portrait. It looks like a bit of a sad emoji, which I think is a good thing, good funny thing about frogfish. You know, that little mouth that's going down. So I like the framing. I'm happy with the centered positioning of the subject. You know, usually when you say, hey, it has to be off-centered, it's better, unless you're going for symmetry, which is what you've done here. So good job on that. I would just say we have a bit of that situation where the eye to the right is a bit darker because of the hair moving on the side and creating that shadow. That's the typical scenario where even if you've positioned your snoot nicely at 45 degrees, you have those shadows. So two options there. It would be either when you see that double front snooting, but I've explained before how tricky and fiddly it is to aim. So if that's you, just make sure you have a few minutes ahead of you before you start and setting up your double front snoot. Or you could try something totally different where you're going to avoid any shadows from those hairs, which are not symmetrical. Grab the snoot, potentially take it off the camera and have it just above the lens, pointing straight, so that you create a bit of that spooky effect with the light coming straight and making those shadows very dramatic from the eyes, from the hairs. I think that could look really, really well really good on a subject like that. Moving on, I'm now going to look at a few photos from Justin. It's another flamboyant cuttlefish image I really like. Quite different from the one that David shared before. Here, we've got that spotlight effect, which can look good in occasions. It does look good here. The meaning I get out of this photo is that it's a behavior shot. For me, it's a behavior shot because that animal is ready to strike. It's in that position where it's gonna throw those tentacles to grab some food. And you're emphasizing that this is what's going to happen because there's more space in front, there's room for those tentacles to come. Of course, I wish I would see the tentacles popping out of the mouth as well, but I like that framing. What I would say is, because you have that oval disc of light, checking on time, I have to go faster. Because we have that oval disc of light, we've got a lot of emptiness above and below. I would consider cropping the top and the bottom and go with a more horizontal framing. I think it would look really well on that, really good on the photo. And also the disc of light is really bright. I know this is probably from the original photo. What I would say is in Lightroom, I would go and I would do a radial gradient on that disc. I would remove the subject, do a negative select subject, and I would just tune down the highlights slightly. This is an absolutely stunning shot. And I realized just today that it was on the homepage of the Houston Photographic Society. So now I know why I liked it so much at the beginning. The lighting is on point, you know, very subtle, but that Tozuma shrimp is really standing out from the background, even though the colors is very slightly different from the shrimp to the algae or coral or whatever it is. And I really like all those skeleton shrimps only slightly revealed behind. I think it's great. If it was my photo, I would probably not have cropped it that tight, but perhaps this is exactly how you composed it. But it's it's a square format, so there might be a bit of cropping room. So if it was me and if I had more space, I would have actually rotated the frame by maybe 40, 30, 45 degrees so that the shrimp is sort of lining up in the diagonal and have a little bit more space in front. And if that was not possible, personally, again, it's very personal, I would personally crop a little bit from the top. That's what I would do if it was my photo, but it is a stunning shot, regardless of what I say.
Tonight.
Okay, then. I love this one too. I love this one too. What stands out to me is the color palette. You've got a red ghost pipefish paired with a green, I forgot the name, crinoid behind. Red and green go really well together, so I love it. What I would just say there, good use of snoot. Again, background separation, but yet we have a little bit of the background, those two pieces of crinoid taking part of the photo. And I think it's much more interesting than having just that animal, no matter how beautiful it is. What I would say is you have on the eye of the animal, the eye is red. You know how you have the red eyes on some photos with people, dogs, cats, whatever. That happens a lot with underwater photos as well. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have that perfect black pupil. Sometimes it's red. No one knows. I mean, I don't know exactly what makes it happen, but I know sometimes I'm lucky, sometimes not. Who says that you had to be unlucky with that? I mean, it's a great shot anyways. I would, if it was mine, I would just go in Lightroom. I would select that pupil and I would make it black. Just turn the exposure down because it could well have been. And because this way, the eye is going to pop out from the subject much more obviously. But yes, stunning shot, absolutely stunning. Just checking on time, Dennis, I think I'm running a bit out. Do I have another 10, 15 or should I wrap it? Should I wrap it up now?
You're okay so far, but we're going to have to shut her down pretty soon.
Say again?
Internet connection is unstable, but it's okay.
Okay, so far. All right. I'll keep on going. This is nice. I'll go a bit quicker. This is nice as well. I would just say I've got a bit too much of those corners. So going back to the suggestion I had from Craig, I think before, that's a scenario where I would suggest a little bit of vignette. Not too much, but you know, a bit of vignette to tune down a bit those corners. Let's now take a look at a video from Craig. Hopefully you can see the video playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Again, I'm much more used to comment on photos than videos, but I really like this video. I think it's a good use of Snoot. I think for videos rather than photography, you don't need to be as precise and specific for the snooting effect to work. Yeah, but cutting the background really works well. So which is what you did, and you're super rock stable as well. So I love that, and I quite like the next one too. So here we have what someone, I think it was Denis, selected before, letting some light bleed into the frame, whereas we're also using the snoot to spotlight the subject. I think it works really well. And because everything is still, you just see that little cleaner fish that's moving on the frogfish, which is quite lovely. The only question mark I have here is, I'm not sure I would have put the frogfish right in the center. But you know, personal preference. It's quite funny to see the lionfish, which is sitting on the left there, which might well be on the menu of that frogfish. I don't know if it's seen it before. I'll just get out of my PowerPoint for a sec because Dennis, for some reason, I couldn't put your videos in the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to play a couple of them here. If you bear with me. Open it up. Yep. Okay, let's go back to the start. So, Denis, I know you say that you're not really snooting because you're not using a proper snoot. I think you're using the Backscatter MW4300 video light, but it has a macro mode, which is a bit like a snoot because it's much tighter. And I think it's a great use for that subject. The subject, the blue ring octopus, you can still see the background, but it does have that spotlight effect that makes it stand out. What I would just say there on that particular video, I would personally prefer to have it darker because the subject is already so much brighter anyways, darker. And it feels to me that it's slightly, maybe my screen, but it's slightly yellow. So I would probably move the white balance ever so slightly to the blue, but it's a lovely video. And then the other one, I cannot open it now. Let me try that. The other one I have from you is this tiger shrimp. It looks like slow motion. I don't know if it is.
I slowed it down. I did slow it down.
You didn't? Okay, so it's just a very mesmerizing movement from that shrimp. I like that sequence. The only thing I would say, let me just open it up again so I can comment. The only thing I would say is here, you might want to get that snoot, the OS1 snoot that you can squeeze in front of that video light you're using. Just to be more specific, I don't mind the sponges or the corals on the back, but I do mind a little bit the front, which is all murky and not very flattering. So either you get that tighter snoot so you can be more specific on just the shrimp, or what you could do is simply push that light further in front so that the foreground is black essentially, and the shrimp is lit, and we get more of the soft corals or the tourniquets behind being lit, because I think they're quite lovely. Let me go back to the presentation. We've seen that before. Cool. Okay, I hope this was helpful. For those of you who sent me the photos, and even for those who didn't send them, but hopefully the commentary was interesting and you had something to take away from it. I will just conclude tonight by extending an invitation to go diving together. Like I said before, I run a couple of trips per year. Even though I do most of my teaching online, I do in-person teaching as well. And the next one I'm really excited about is the Philippines. We're going to Darwin in June 2026. We've timed that trip just together with the Dive Darwin Festival. Some of you might have heard about it. It's a shootout competition. So basically, all the participants have to submit either photos or videos that they shot during a 3-day period anywhere around Darwin. So there's a bunch of dive centers that participate, taking people anywhere there. And there's $17,000 worth of prizes to win. So, you know, it's not DPG Masters, but it's still a pretty big competition. And most importantly, it's very fun. I mean, you're gathered with only underwater photographers and videographers in Darwin for a few days. And the plan that I'm proposing there is for a group of photographers, but videographers are very welcome as well, to join me a few days before the competition. And during those few days, we will be at Silver Reef Dive Resort, which is a lovely eco-friendly resort run by 2 photographers. During those workshops, I will do daily coaching. Every night, there will be a time where we sit down together and I can look at your photos, your videos, give some feedbacks and help and improve. I will do lectures as well every day. There will be a very low 2 guests per dive ratio, because I don't believe in, you know, a bunch of photographer or videographer following that one guide. So only 2 people per guide to make sure you get the attention you need on your images. Yeah, Darwin is fantastic for macro. There is some wide-angle photography in nearby island called Apo. We will go there as well for those who are keen. And there is a wide-angle category in the competition as well. And participation to the competition is included in the workshop. I think it's a great workshop to attend for anyone that wants to push their underwater imaging and their creativity further. Whether or not you're, you know, a serial competitor, you do competitions all the year round, and you're really keen, you're going there to win. And if that's you, I wish you the best, and I'm going to help the best I can. But, you know, even if you haven't done competitions before, but you're looking for an excuse to push your creativity, I think it's a great group to join. We are doing a core workshop we're starting on the 20th of June, concluding on the 28th. For anyone that's available to come 2 days before, we have a longer workshop. and that gives you more time to get familiar with the dive site and the locations, and to start to craft the photos that you and the videos that you will want to execute during the 3 competition days.
We're going to have to, Nicholas, we're going to have to shut her down. We have a photo contest we're going to have to show. But
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you loose on at this point in time, but we have to be out of here at 9 o'clock our time. I want to
No
thank
problem
you
at all.
so much for taking the time to give us more than what we hoped for, especially with the critique that you gave. Thank you so much, and I hope that we can all join you somewhere in the future.
Sounds good. My pleasure, and I'm going to stop the sharing now.
Yeah,
All right.
Justin, I don't know if you have 2 or 3 minutes to show your gadget or not.
It's actually just the snoot, the exact same snoot that he had on his photos.
Okay, where's your gadget?
Let me get it. It's a snoot.
Well,
This is what I was planning to bring in person. Looks familiar?
yeah,
Basically,
it's the
Snoot is
same
two-
one that he has, yeah.
Yeah, it's Snoot 2 pieces. You know, it is an actual strobe, so it's an optical strobe. You can remove the diffuser, connect it all up. You always have to like burp it once you get underwater. And then you know, you got the aperture card that you can use to shape your light. And as Nicholas was demonstrating, if you want to spend a little extra, you can buy the backscatter color palette, get creative. So I was gonna bring it for show and tell.
Okay, I think we need to get on to the, I know that Henry had a very interesting gadget. I don't know if we have time for it or not.
We'll do it next year.
We'll do it next year. He's got the, what is it, the
MFO3.
MFO3 that creates a,
Oh, full.
yeah, it's an Autocam. Yeah, we'll see it next year. Okay, this is going to be our photo contest. right. Oh, that's all. Hey, get us back here. I want to talk to our people out on
Congratulations.
Zoom lands. Thank you very much, everybody. We had a good Zoom group. I understand that Javon and Pee Wee weren't able to get on. I don't know what's going on there, but we'll work it out. Overall, we had a good meeting. Actually, overall, we had a good attendance. How many people going for dinner tonight? La Tapatia.
We got on, Dennis.
Oh, you did get on. Okay.
Yeah, we did. We watched the whole thing.
All right. Well, I don't know how that happened.
I did. I went back to May newsletter.
Okay, well, thank you very much for showing up. And Nicholas, thank you again.
That was a good presentation.
That was awesome.
Really. Okay,
Bye.
we're out. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.